This is the Akko Jelly White switches, another budget linear switch on their Jelly line, and Akko claims that this is an upgraded version of their vintage white. So how do they sound and feel? Let's find out. What is going on, guys? Ox here and welcome back to my channel. We are back with yet another Akko Jelly switches, but this time we'll be taking a look and listen at the Jelly Whites. This is indeed another linear switch, and before we start the video, please don't forget to leave a like and consider subscribing to my channel for more switch reviews. So, a very quick disclaimer, the switches were sent for a review, but I wasn't paid to make the video, so of course, I'll give you guys my unbiased and honest opinion about the Jelly Whites. Now, in today's video, we'll be doing the usual, a stock versus Lubed sound test, and a sound test comparison on the vintage white, because Akko claims that this is like a modded version or like an upgraded version on the vintage white. And of course, I'll be doing a breakdown on the materials that was used on the switch. So if you want to hear my thoughts and opinion about the Akko Jelly White, please do stick around at the end of the sound test. And of course, we'll be using my Vega 65. It has a polycarbonate plate, a PCB to plate foam, and one case foam. The keycaps would be Geek Art PBT, and the switches was lubed with a Krydox 205 grade 0 and 105 grade 0 on the springs. So with that out of the way, please do enjoy the sound test. So that was the sound test for the Akko Jelly White switches. Let me know what you think about them on the comment section down below. Would love to have a discussion with you guys. And before we talk about my thoughts and opinion about the Jelly Whites, let's go ahead and break down the materials that was used on the switch. As you've guessed it, these are still a 3-pin switch. And it's still using a box type stem. I think they are still using polycarbonate for the top and bottom housing. Of course, we have POM for the stem. And lastly, the springs, which are still a long boy springs coming in with 22 mm with an actuation force of 35 gram. And here are some spring comparison with the previous CS and Jelly switches. So that was the materials that was used on the Jelly White switches, and if you made it up to this point, I would like to say thank you for staying, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's talk about my thoughts and opinion about the Jelly White switches. But first, let me just give you guys a quick disclaimer. The sound and experience may vary depending on your keyboard build, your desk mat, and even your microphone. So a lot of factors vary, but I'm using my Vega 65 with a polycarbonate plate, a PCB to plate foam, and one case foam. The Geek Arc PBT was used on the keycaps, and the switches was lubed with a Krydox 205 grade 0 and 105 grade 0 on the spring. Now let's talk about my thoughts on the feel. On stock, there's quite a noticeable spring crunch, but they are smooth out of the box. I still highly suggest to lube them as it will make it feel better and smoother. Some light lube application will actually do the job. Now my only gripe here is that some of you might find the actuation very light. For me, I didn't seem to mind it the longer I used it, and I can say that they do actually feel the same as the vintage white, as they have the same extension spring, but I can say that this kind of feels better and more solid to type on. Now my thoughts on the sound. On stock, like the other Jelly switches, you can actually hear some spring and lift ping, but of course lubing it would lessen and do the job, and I do find the Jelly Whites are a bit deeper sounding than the Jelly Black and the Jelly Starfish, but it's still leaning towards the clackier and poppier sound profile as it has that snappier sound. And in comparison to the vintage whites, both are completely different in my opinion. This sounds more high-pitched, while the vintage white sounds really deep on my Vega. But I have no complaints on the sound as it fits my preference, and it's a fairly decent sounding linear switch, but it has nothing special to note at. So my overall thoughts would be, yeah, I think this is really an upgrade from the vintage white. As mentioned, they do feel the same in terms of the lightness, but the Jelly Whites, it feels more solid and complete as a switch, even though it kinda has the same springs like the vintage white. I also prefer the sound profile of these over the vintage whites. Now, to be honest, I would only suggest getting this if you are thinking between these or the vintage whites, but if you already have the vintage white, I do suggest that getting a different linear switch. The difference between the two is not that mind-blowing, but I think it's more worth it to get a different linear rather than upgrading to the Jelly White. Again, if you have the budget and if you don't mind spending, by all means, try the Jelly White and maybe compare it with your vintage white. And for beginners out there, one thing that I would like to note is that these are really light, so weigh your options. Again, at the end of the day, it would still boil down to your preference, and I'm just giving my insight or thoughts on the switch. So that is it for the video, guys. I hope you like another review on another jelly switch from Akko, and let me know your opinion and thoughts on them on the comment section down below. And please don't forget to hit the like button, and let's try to aim 50 likes, because a simple like would actually help out my channel grow. Consider subscribing as well, as we're close at hitting 1,500 subscribers. We have one more Akko jelly to cover, and that is the jelly pink. And after this, I think we can finally cover some JWK or gather run switches. Again, thank you Akko for sending them over. All of Akko's link would be in the description down below. So don't forget, again, please do hit the like button, share if you want, and of course, subscribe for more. And I'll see you guys on the next sound test. Peace.